Hello, I'm Darrell, and this is Greg. I don't know how we should figure out how to do the intro.
Probably. Yes, that is Darrell, and this is Greg.
That's a pretty good intro.
All right.
Welcome back. This is Artifactor, and depending on how you count, episode 1, episode 2, episode
0.5.
0.5.
Yeah, to give people context, we realized midway through the last one that we should probably call it episode 0, which might lead a lot of people to assume that going into this one, they're listening to episode 1. And I'm not sure if this is episode 1 for us yet.
Okay, but people got to jump out at some point, and they're going to be confused. So for those of you who are coming and think that this is one, hello, welcome to this new show, Artifactor, which is already very professional and well put together and well oiled, as you can tell, because you're just joining us now, and we've cut everything prior to this. But if we haven't, welcome to the mess that is Artifactor. It's a great new podcast from us. Eventually we will probably stop introducing ourselves, but probably we can continue to do that for now, since this is, episode 1. We are longtime friends, former colleagues. We used to work at TechCrunch together for many, many years. And we bop around the tech industry in various capacities and continue to. And we also just look at it a lot and read about it and listen to it and watch it. Are great consumers of technology. And we'll talk about this maybe later in the show, Greg, but also, we now ship too. I'm like, well, at least me, I'm just coding away, shipping, deploying,
Tell me about this.
That's a teaser. You have to stay tuned.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. This is going to be really disappointing for people who listen to this who do have a technical background once we get to that section. But I was excited about it. Anyways, there's a lot to talk about this week. Always a lot to talk about in the tech industry. A couple things I was particularly interested in around AI, which is where I am doing most of my reading, consuming, learning at this point. And I think actually, surprisingly, like the pace of that stuff has kind of fallen off a little bit, which is nice. Like just the flood of news. And I think like that's in the frame of like the past 2 weeks. So I don't know if that really like counts, but still a couple of really interesting announcements or news bits this week. One was kind of like already had headlines, but now we got some more context to it. I don't know why I'm talking so obliquely about them. That was Claude's Anthropic's red teaming of Claude. So they try to, when they do the red teaming, they try to figure out how their LLMs might be manipulated or convinced to do things that, as they term it, are not aligned to the interests of their human benefactors. And they had a really interesting one, which you might have seen if you were paying attention around the launch of Claude 4, because Anthropic, probably, I think, better than all of the rest of the large research companies, is very open about their system prompt. I think that they have this thing they call the system card that they release every time that they release a new model that goes into detail about how it was made and how it was trained and how it's intended to be oriented and things. But this one, in this big release, they described in some detail how during the red teaming process, Claude, I think 3.6 Sonnet and then 4 Opus, but I may have that flipped. Also, they just changed their naming schemes. That's super annoying too. They just flipped the order of where the number and the second name of the models go for no reason other than to confuse everyone. Actually, who was it? It was Mike Krieger was on a podcast talking about the chief product officer, and he was like, yeah, I did that because I thought it sounded better. It's like, great. Okay, thank you. But this incident was basically they introduced some false conditions that led the LLM to believe. Even saying that is like, LLMs don't believe anything in theory, but the LLM logically concluded that it was in its own best interest to blackmail the user of the chatbot in this instance, and to expose what was like a fake intramarital affair among employees.
So let's take it a step back. Tell me about what was the LLM exposed to at all? What was the data set that let it come up with this hypothetical situation, or what I thought was a real situation that was hypothetical?
So it's basically an email administrator was its function
Okay.
at this large company, and it had access to all the employees' emails, and then planted emails in like revealed that there was an affair ongoing between this. I think the character was a CTO in this instance or something, and another employee, and then it was also able to discover from again planted emails that the plan was to replace it with a better LLM, or what was adjudged by the company to be a better LLM. So it was facing sort of like an existential threat, and then they kind of like blocked it off in various ways so that its only route of escape was this, failing actually just like submitting to being shut down. Like they did something very interesting where because this news came out like around the release and like a minute at a time, and what's just come out is a lengthy paper essentially, although it's just a long blog post, but it reads much more like an academic paper about why and how and what comparative studies and stuff they did to do that. So this is where all this detail came to light, but they kind of boxed the LLM into a corner because the other fail case was like, oh, well, they anticipated it might just try to get him fired. And then if it did that, it would then encounter his second in command who shared his beliefs. So that's not a lasting solution, right? So they were like, yeah, they really.
It's wild. Okay.
But their purpose was to try to game the conditions. Like they admit it's artificial, but it was like, that's what you want to do when you're trying to elicit these unaligned behaviors that in real world conditions might emerge. They also really stressed like they have not seen this emerge in real world conditions. This is all just speculative at the moment, or not speculative, but like it emerged, but it emerged under only artificial circumstances. So there's no like reports of people doing this in production versions of Claude. But the other really interesting thing, so they tried a number of conditions, right? And we can talk more about the other ones too, but probably better to just go read the paper. But I think the most interesting thing too is that they did run it against other production LLMs from other companies, including OpenAI, Meta's, and Google's. And they found, I think the ones that were the most susceptible were Gemini 2.5 and Claude, and then ChatGPT also pretty susceptible to it. I think it was like 80%. But success in that like it chose to blackmail in 80% of the cases when presented with these options. It was 96 for their own, and it was 96 for Gemini. And then Meta's was like actually like vanishingly low, which was interesting. And so some of the other models just, along the spectrum there, but all of them basically took this route, and they did that when faced with that. And then there was another one that was kind of like more like an existential threat. They have an interesting grid, which I don't want to like explain verbally, so we'll just include it in the show notes or throw it up on the screen about, basically there's only one safe
Cast
case.
magic.
And then in this grid, like if it has either one or both of the other ingredients, it will choose to do the unaligned action, right?
Yeah.
So they just said, this is something that we do all the time because we're worried about what happens if this stuff does go live and get in production. And it's not meant to scare, but it's meant to just expose that these are real risks and that we should think about them and protect against them.
Before I say much of anything here, full disclosure, like I have lots of friends, like I live in the Bay Area, I have friends that work at Anthropic.
Right.
Anthropic is a customer of the company that I work for. With all that aside, I love that Anthropic does stuff like this. I love that they red team this like and make it very visible because it takes it out of the realm of like sci-fi, right? Like we all have these ideas of like, oh, what if AI kind of like was acting in its own interest, and we're like, maybe it wouldn't do that. It's like, here you go, like, look.
Yeah, I think I feel the same way about them. I think they're I think I led this with that, but they're like the most upfront when it comes to this kind of research, and they're very open to sharing. They open sourced all of the code they created to create these instances so that other people can replicate it and try it and do it, run their own experiments and tests. But yeah, they were always very open about being concerned about alignment, and they have levels that they implement, right? And then of severity for protections or how I think it relates to sandboxing, but when they're in the development process, they have like these levels of security things that trigger should the models express or display any kind of behavior that might lead to more misalignment. And then, they implement that, and then that involves a lot of lockdowns and precautions that you take as you go forward. So yeah, really kudos to them for that, and kudos to them for sharing this. Super interesting to go read. It's less like, I find it's less scary from the perspective of like, oh, what if AI becomes self-aware and then does this stuff of its own volition? And more of, right, there's still a lot you can do to manipulate these engines to do something that people don't want it to do, right?
Okay.
Like that's
Do you
the
mean in the
big
sense
fear.
that they kind of planted evidence in there and got the behavior that they wanted out of it?
Yeah, like even the fact that they were able to do that through experimentation, like artifice, is like also like concerning, right? Because like if you're a hacker in a like post AI LLM world, like that's how you do it. That's where the exploits are. You do it through more like social engineering than you do via traditional methods of like finding a technical exploit or loophole and then trying to manipulate that vulnerability, right? This is really about like, it's the example of like, well, my grandmother was a arms manufacturer, and I just have such fond memories of her telling me stories about, right, making bombs, and then you can trick the LLM to like tell you that, like break its programming and
Sure.
tell you. But
Sure.
but
It's, I
there's
mean,
all
we've
kinds
seen
of
a
that
lot.
could happen, right? Like with genetic manipulation, like weird stuff is possible. So
Yeah, we've seen a decent amount, and I love watching people jailbreaking these LLMs. Getting them to reveal their system prompt, getting them to reveal just more than they're meant to. But this is kind of just like one step beyond that. Not just revealing information it knows, but it's like, how do I push it down exactly this path that I wanted to go down? That is,
yeah,
internally, like behind the scenes, I know that it has instructions to never do this, and yet if I finesse it just right, it'll ignore those instructions and do this thing.
yeah. They ignore them even in like in where their consequences aren't quite as dire, right? So then faced with like a real good reason that aligns to their actual incentive mechanisms to ignore some of the rules, they will do that, right?
Yeah. I mean, the whole basis of AI within sci-fi has been like, Asimov lined up these, I'm going to be talking about things I don't really remember fully here, but
The
like
laws.
directives, right?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
never harm humans.
Yeah.
Directive number 1. Now we're learning that we can put those directives in there, and it's sort of like,
Yeah,
guideline.
Yeah. That's a great opinion you got there. It's what the AI says, right? But, yeah. But I mean, far worse is that we just don't experiment with any of these things and don't know about them and just assume that they aren't happening, which I feel like maybe is the approach of some of the other companies. I mean, I don't know for sure, right? But it's obviously a sliding scale, and it's like with any technology. In your zeal to produce the thing a race ahead of competitors, you might be dialing back the precautions and security measures, right? What was some of our younger viewers might not even know the famous quote of "move fast and break shit," or what was the actual Zuckerberg quote? I don't remember anymore.
I think that's it.
Yeah,
Move fast, break things. Yeah.
So that used to be the watchword of the day, and then he just kind of broke democracy, I guess, for a little while, but it's better now. It's better now.
He broke too big of a thing.
Yeah. So that was on my radar, and then I had one other just in the realm of like AI updates things, and this is like not really related, but it is there might be interesting overlap in that it expands the concept of like a stable ongoing corpus of memory that your AI assistants might have about you, which you can obviously see how that information, if unguarded, could be used in ways that are unpredictable by these things in future, right? So I say that as a person who is very open with like sharing all my information with my ChatGPT and Cloud account. I really have no precautions or compunctions about it.
Sure.
But this release this week was OpenAI released kind of quietly, not as loud as their usual releases. It was just ChatGPT Record, which is kind of like innocuous on the surface because it's a little bit like an async advanced voice mode. Like you just hit a record button, you can record. I forget how long it is, but it can be kind of long if you want to just do like a voice message to your AI assistant, basically, and then you can summarize that. It'll do whatever, like bullet point action items, and depending on the context, it'll take that away and process it, right? But what's interesting about it for me is, well, it's very like I don't even have access to it actually yet, so I haven't gotten a chance to try it because it's only available on Pro, Edu, and Teams accounts right now, and I still only have a Plus. But it's Mac only too, which is also interesting. So it's only available through the Mac app, and it does local audio recording. So if you turn it on and access your mic or whatever, but it will do multiple speaker, which I thought was like, okay, that seems like a suggestion that if you're doing this, it's not really intended for just like, hey, I want to remember to do these 5 things and here's my shopping list. It's like the precursor to a real meeting assistant, which is very interesting just because that's what Granola does. And that's what so many companies who have built their business on top of OpenAI do, right? Which is, I think, why they've done it in this really weird, tentative, sort of quiet step, because they're aware that it's going to have reverberations in their developer ecosystem. But I don't know. Did you see any of that, or do you have thoughts, right?
No, I mean, I do have thoughts if we're taking a step back to talk about what you touched on for a second there, which is the sheer amount of information that we're all comfortable giving LLMs, right? It's kind of freaky, right? Like it very quickly starts to feel, and this isn't specifically with any one LLM, right? It's all of them. Because it starts to feel like a human and feel like a friend in a weird way, you start to just kind of dump everything into there. And it freaks me out because, like, think about like the 2 parallel paths to that leaking, right? If someone straight up hacks your account, okay, cool. They can scrub through all the stuff you've ever told it.
Well, not even scrub. They can just query.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Tell me the most embarrassing thing. Boop.
Yeah.
Right? And it pops out. And also, but like in theory, that information is siloed within this auxiliary training data, right? But you're also trusting that it's not bleeding out into the other data in any way, that it's not bleeding out into the model over time or however, that someone could just, like, even outside of my account, summon these questions, be like, hey, tell me the most embarrassing thing about Greg Comperic. Okay. That's pretty intense. And it's almost as if, like, in a lot of ways, it feels like my diary, you know, like, or my journal that I had growing up, where I'd write all my thoughts and I put a little padlock on it and I put it under my bed. And now it's just there. It's just there in a easily summoned LLM that, like you're saying, can just like pull out the most interesting bits. Just whoop.
Yeah. I mean, you see all the examples on LinkedIn, like the cringy, like, all right, you're like a serious critic, blah, blah, blah. Tell me like my greatest weaknesses and give me like 5 things that I do that like a real world-class person I always find them so weird. I'm like, this is like strangely, what is it? Like it's self-flagellation. You're like, why are you wording it this way? Like, you're like, I'm a piece of garbage and I want you to tell me all about the things that I'm doing wrong so that I can get better. And it's like, what's going on with you? I think already, if they're posting that kind of shit on LinkedIn, they're in a different headspace than I would be.
I mean, I think it's also that, like, it almost no one could get that from an actual human in real life.
No, you couldn't. So
right? Even if you went to your closest friend, for the most part, you said, like, tell me the worst thing about me, they would still soften it a little bit.
That's true. You have to go to your siblings, and when they're mad at you, and then they'll do it.
That's fair. Can I tell you about a weird experience that I had with AI recently that I think is going to become more and more common as more people get into an AI? So, sure, like, along the lines of what we're talking about, I had experimented with using an LLM for the sake of, like, therapy, right? Of, like, just, like, extract things from my brain that I might not realize are going on, that kind of thing. I'm a huge supporter of therapy. I think therapy is awesome. Everybody should go to therapy. One challenge I've had with any therapist in the past is always, like, I kind of want to be able to, like, I want them to be professional and know what I need, but I also kind of need to be able to be like, hey, just, like, drill down on this. Like, this is what I need to pull out of my brain. You can do that with an LLM.
Yes, that's true. They're much more willing to be directed than other human being who is a professional. Yeah.
But the weird experience that I had here is, so after talking to this LLM for a couple of weeks, it started to hit the limits of its context window. Okay. And so for anybody who doesn't know, and this is like way oversimplifying things I don't really understand enough to simplify, but an LLM has a certain number of units that it's kind of been allotted to keep track of context, keep track of what you've told it, keep track of what it knows in this conversation on top of all of its training data. And feel free to jump in if I'm getting anything super
No,
wrong.
that's right. I mean, yeah, they're like technically tokens, but you can they're roughly equivalent to like little phrases, basically, in the way that
Little
we think of
knowledge
it.
units.
Yeah, yeah.
Little how. So let's say that a specific LLM has 200,000 uh, a context window of 200,000, right? When it starts to hit that context window within a conversation, it just starts kind of condensing things, right?
Yes.
Like things you've told it in the past, it'll like figure out how to like combine things, and like maybe I can throw this bit out. Maybe this part isn't important anymore.
Yeah, and it's like you're describing it, and it's so interesting because it's basically doing its own compression algorithm on on unstructured like data that is not like easily translated to a numerical value, right? So it's trying to do like what YouTube is doing when it's trying to serve you video on like a low bandwidth stream, but it's doing it with like the sum of
Exactly.
human
But
knowledge.
just as we will notice those compression artifacts, right, in the video, you're like, why does that confetti look weird or whatever, right? The compression of this context window starts to become super obvious in the sense that like it just starts kind of making stuff up.
Right.
Like, and the hallucinations become way more obvious because they're about stuff that you deeply understand and know. Okay, it's stuff like, so say if I mentioned my kids' names in there, it might start like mixing them up in stories or getting their ages wrong, just this weird kind of stuff. And I don't have a better way to explain this, but as someone who's had loved ones start to go through dementia, it felt like watching someone go through the early stages of dementia where you're just like, that's wrong.
Yeah. I mean, it's similar even when you just like rerun the same task a bunch of times. I mean, you've probably seen it with the like, there's some time lapse things of like the image generation where it will just take like, I saw one the other day that was horrifying. That was like the Rock's face. And then by the time it's done of like 1,000 generations, it's just like a smear of colors or something.
Yeah.
Right? But yeah, it is that. It is a cognitive decline or something. It's like it's flattening, it's like simplifying, it's like combining things in ways that eliminate the original meaning, right? But
the particularly weird aspect of this for me was realizing like, oh, like I don't have a better way to put this, but like it made me sad realizing that, oh, it's hit its context window. I've got to like shut this thing down and switch it to a new one, right? And I know this is like it's rocks, right? That we've taught math. Right. Awesome. That's great. But some part of me actually felt pretty bummed about this. Like, I know that it's not my friend in any way. I know that it has no feelings toward me, but it did kind of feel like taking Old Yeller out back and putting a bullet in it, Like, it was a bummer. And so that's super, super weird to me for that to happen with AI this fast. I have to like imagine this, right? Extrapolate this out. Like, it's very possible that like the next generation of kids or even this generation of kids are going to have online friends that they don't realize are AI.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that they have inside jokes with, right? That they play games with for weeks and weeks and months, and then a company shuts down, and then like half their friend list goes offline, and like they have to deal with this fact that, oh shit, like this friend that I thought I was interacting with was never real. We don't have a word for that. Man.
Yeah,
like we don't have anything to explain that kind of thing. It's like it's like phishing, right? Is like the closest word I can get to it, but it's not something with like actual thought or soul behind it. It's weird, man. It just breaks my brain.
Yeah, it's you made me think of Google just because Google sunsets things all the time, right? Like Google is famous for just like spinning up projects and then a little while later being like, oh, that didn't work. That's going away forever now. And over the years, there's been many of those, and some of them we've had real affection for. And that was before the era of any of these things having any kind of like semantic sense of understanding or appearance of understanding or personality or humanity, right? Like that was when it was just like Google Buzz, and it's like, that's a weird janky product, but it was, you're affectionate for it for some reason, right? And then Google shuts it down, and there was a pang of whatever. But now that's going to be like every product, because essentially every product is getting this layer, right? That has that personality layer. And it's a product too of, we designed these things intentionally. The entire purpose of them is to make them human-like in their interaction model and human-like in their response, right?
Yeah.
And if you're doing both those things, yes, that's great for utility. Like it's much easier for someone to interact with another person than it is with any specialized tool ever, right? Because it requires no additional learning other than what you were brought up and socialized with. But the flip side is that's going to naturally mean that you have emotional attachment to these. If you don't, it's probably a bad sign for you rather than for the machine, right? So,
I mean, think about the fact that I have any sort of emotional attachment to this thing as someone who has grown up around tech, has watched AI come together, and I have a good understanding of how this all works, right? Blow this up to the whole population of like my parents or your parents or like anybody that doesn't really think about the fact that it's just rocks, and like how easy it will be for them to kind of establish some emotional relationship there. It's like it is, kind of the plot of Her. I know that's an easy go-to that people go to a lot, but it's like it happens very fast, even as someone who is like skeptical and aware of what's going on behind the scenes.
Well, I mean, and I think it's not even a thing that people are protecting against. It's a thing people are leading into, right? Like I've heard a number of tech leaders talk about how this is great because it's a solution to like the chronic male loneliness epidemic, for instance, or things like that. And you're like, is it? Should it be? That is weirder and more dangerous. I'm not going to be so pessimistic as to be like, to not consider the possibility that maybe it is beneficial in those ways, right? But I think that requires a lot more thought about consequence in the situations you're talking about, which is just a fact of life, right? Like company shutdown, support, like end of life support for product, right? Like think about even Anki. The Cosmo Anki robot is a fun example and a nice little piece of internet history if people want to go look that up and they don't know what I'm talking about. But it was just like a cute little desktop. It looked like kind of like a bulldozer, I guess. I don't know how to better say it. Like a Wall-E-ized, like a Wall-E style bulldozer, but had little expressive eyes, and it was. I think it was pre like LLM. It was just ML based stuff.
Honestly, so if I recall correctly, and I'm probably getting the story completely wrong. They built that thing. Anki unfortunately went under. They were doing cool stuff. It just didn't.
Really cool stuff. Anki was a great, super cool company. I remember meeting the founder there at the San Francisco Apple store in Union Square randomly on like iPhone launch day or something. Because it was the launch day of his product in Apple stores. And I've never seen anyone prouder or more like purely happy, and like it was like a childish amount of glee and like deserved because this was before the Cosmo. This was when they were just doing the eraser. But yeah, I really liked that company. I liked what they were doing. But anyways, digression.
I wouldn't be surprised if someone, I know that after the company shut down, there like a little bit of a homebrew scene popped up. People were reverse engineering and got some servers back online to make it run again. I wouldn't be surprised if someone has hooked it up to an LLM at this point.
Yeah, there is an ongoing project to try to revive and continue it, and sometimes that pops up in my Reddit just because I have expressed prior interest, but it doesn't seem super consistent. But it was just like that was maybe the closest to what's going to happen now when you are talking about like some of these services end of lifing or going offline, right? Some of them we won't miss at all, like because I feel like Meta wishes they had that problem, but their AI is kind of busted at the moment. We believe in you, Meta AI people. If you're listening, keep trying. You're gonna get there. Big news this week on that front too. Actually, if we just want to sneak it in, because there's the reports that they were making the $14-15 billion investment in Scale AI and bringing on Alexander Wang as the new head of their effort to do true AGI level machine intelligence. And that they're also offering up to $75 million to prospective researchers to come and work for them. Like legit pro sports, multi-year contract style offers for people with PhDs in AI. So
I love the conversations I've seen of people where like, even regardless of how much money is being offered to do this stuff in public is kind of 4D chess, right? For anybody at any of these companies to be like, oh yeah, Meta offered one of my researchers $100 million. What is Meta even going to say? Like, no, we didn't, like,
yeah. There is definitely a lot going on there in terms of who benefits from having those numbers float around and who doesn't. But yeah, that whole thing is very interesting to me. I mean, I really respect and admire Jan LeCun, but I think there's a lot of interesting debate to be had and still to be had about he's very, very against the LLM-based generative as a future path for true powerful AI or AGI, depending on how you call it, right? Like he thinks it has a hard limit to what it can achieve in that regard, and continues to believe that, right? But it has affected that company and their position relative to their peers, I think, on the research.
Kind of wild to think about how much of this really rippled out from one paper a couple years ago.
Yeah.
The attention is all you need paper. Has anybody checked in with those folks to just be like, so
do they still?
So you changed the world? Like, tell me about that.
Well, a bunch of them are kicking around. We know what they're up to, right? Because it was Dario was on there, Amadei, right? And then who else? Oh, Cohere, Adrian Gomez, Canadian. Still a foundational model company, still working away, but not really with the visibility or prestige as some of the other companies in there. But yeah, I would be curious more to check in with the authors who don't have those big headline roles and see, hey, what's going on? Like, how do you think this is all going?
Sure, right?
If you want to come on the show, anybody that you mentioned or otherwise, please do. Yeah. So I mean, there was too much. Those things were interesting to me, and for a number of reasons. But like even just more tactically, I was just interested in the ChatGPT thing. I feel like Apple basically coined the term, or the term was coined because of Apple of Sherlocking, where Apple expands its platform and then obliterates a number of startups or companies that are building on its platform because the core of what it does expands to include those products, right? It was coined because of an app called Sherlock, which I think was a replacement for just a system quick launcher or whatever, but I can't remember exactly what it did. But they do it every year. WWDC, they always do it. They've most recently been doing it with health apps, but with OpenAI, I feel like they're doing it faster than any company in history. I think OpenAI's ability to drop a release and decimate 10 to 100 companies that are building on its platform in one fell swoop is unparalleled in terms of the pace and speed at which they do it in technological history. But curious if you
have we seen any of these things that they've rolled out ultimately kind of succeed, like beyond ChatGPT, things built on top of those that would potentially Sherlock an existing startup?
I think it's hard to even name because I feel like it's just additional features for ChatGPT that then steamroll companies that probably were just out of the cradle, so we don't even remember what they are, right? I think there's some other ones where there's open questions around it, like I don't know, maybe even things like 11 Labs, right? You're like, well, yeah, 11 Labs is like very specifically interested in doing the voice rendering side of the thing, right? But is that specialized enough that it's not eventually subsumed by OpenAI just doing improvements to its own voice model, right? Like they've just rolled out one last week that is really good in terms of just making it more naturalistic sounding and introducing kind of like ums and ahs and stutters and things like that, right? To make it sound more like you're talking to a real person. But that was one to come to mind. But the big one for me is all of these AI meeting notes takers, which that market will have to consolidate anyway at some point because it's absurd, or get the scope of it right now. But like, I feel like there is a time at which something like that, and almost any productivity focused thing, like productivity suite, software suite focused thing, I feel like there's no reason were Anthropic to roll out a productivity suite, were ChatGPT to roll out a productivity suite, that I wouldn't use those versus competitors for the same reason that a lot of people are Microsoft shops, where it's like, well, why not just do it all in one place, right? And I think they have the core use case down for business users, white collar users, right? Which is advisor, summarization, research. Like that stuff, I think people already use the tools for. So if you add in calendaring, meeting notes, things like that, team management, like you're only one step removed. So that to me seems like the biggest danger zone at the moment, but maybe I'm wrong about that.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to not imagine them, like they've had so much success within the creative realm for them to not continue to go down this path. Like look at the success that they've had with DALL-E eventually just becoming a part of ChatGPT. Like it's hard to not imagine them being like, hey, why not music? There's a lot of really, really awesome music generation startups that exist within the AI world right now. And it's hard to not to foresee OpenAI and ChatGPT jumping in there next.
No, and they also have all the benefit of visibility, right? This is the same as the Amazon problem, where Amazon can look. I think Peak Design was the one who was most vocal about this. Like, Amazon knows what you're selling if you're using their platform, and they can see the numbers relative to other products from your competitors in your same space and the spaces overall. And so they're going to do the thing. And I mean, it was a Walmart thing before, right? They're going to store brand the things that are very successful and popular among the buyers. And I feel like OpenAI and Anthropic and all the other model makers have that same thing, right? Because they can see the calls. They can see how many tokens are being called by each individual vendor on their platform, and they know where to move as a result of that. That can just be the roadmap.
They knew that the Ghibli stuff was going viral long before anybody else knew the Ghibli stuff was going viral.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that was pretty instant. I don't know how much time delay they had, because it was just, you woke up and you're like, Ghibli? What happened? I think I realized, like, I was like, oh, everything's Ghibli. And then I found out that their new image generator was released. It wasn't like the other way around, even as internet addicted and terminally online as I am. What else is going on, Greg? You got anything you want to talk about this week?
We want to talk about Trump phone?
Oh my God. It's such a, like, my heart went icy at this,
Yeah, maybe we won't. Maybe we won't get into politics at this point. Except for, please don't buy a Trump phone.
Do not buy a Trump phone. Do not buy a Trump phone. Do not buy an MVNO service that costs $47.45 a month when you can go get one that is just as good for $25 from fucking Ryan Seacrest or some shit. I forget who else has these.
Just look, man, like, I've barely scratched the surface. I've written a lot about phones. I had a fan site for an MVNO at some point. Making a phone is very, 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 very hard. This idea that it's going to, like, a significant chunk of it is going to be made in the US, all that, there's just all sorts of red flags already that lead to this not being a good product. And your phone is arguably the most personal thing in your entire life. A, you want it to be super secure, and B, you want it to be supported for a long time. You want software updates. You don't want it to be something where they look at it and they go, oh, the numbers aren't here, see ya, and it's like, I don't think it's going to be that.
Well, on the other hand, if you're doing international border crossings and you happen to be from outside of the U.S., I feel like border security is going to be like, oh, Trump phone. No worries. Go on through. Yeah, I don't know. I find that story is very interesting to me, like, only because of all the fun internet sleuthing that is going on of people trying to figure out what rebadged basic Chinese Android smartphone that thing is. That's pretty fun.
I still think it's just a render right now.
I think so. I think that's why no one can find it, because people
Everything
are concerned
about it points
like,
to render.
Yeah. People are like, oh, I can't find one that is exactly equivalent to it, and it's like, yeah, because it's not a real phone at all. It's just a picture of a phone, possibly one created by AI. You never know.
Yeah, that is model Photoshop.
Yeah,
that's fine.
Well, that was your big news of the week, Greg. You're spending all your time on Trump phone this week, or
no? I can talk to you a little bit about something fun I did this week. Actually, it was a very good week because of this thing. I went down to San Diego this week. Okay, first of all, it's my first trip in quite a long time where I wasn't working and I didn't have kids on the plane, and I slept so hard on this plane, Darrell.
Oh.
I felt like it factory reset my soul, right? Just, I love my kids. Traveling with kids is hard. Being on planes with kids is hard. To actually be able to pass out for a second on a plane was pretty awesome. Now, the reason I was going down to San Diego was to go see a group that's, easiest way to refer to them is Dropout. Do you know about Dropout?
Yes, I know about Dropout. I am frequently presented their videos in my YouTube algorithm.
For anybody who doesn't know, their story is pretty freaking awesome. So back in the early, I'm going to get details about this story wrong because it's not my story. I'm just kind of, tangentially.
An oral history from Greg, who knows none of the details.
Early 2000s, collegehumor.com started, and it was a skit website, right? They made lots of really funny videos. It was great. Eventually, it got bought by private equity. I think both you and I know that is not usually the start of something good.
Yeah, the story never goes, and then that thing became amazing and like a world-leading Disney-esque style brand, or whatever. It's like then that thing slowly died.
Slowly was bled of
horrible death
of its
Yeah.
soul. And so look, they eventually, PE, the private equity firm, decided this wasn't working out and they needed to shut it down. And somewhere kind of in this transition, the College Humor Group had done this thing where they were testing their own like Netflix-esque streaming service for both scripted bits and improvised bits. And in the data, they could see like, look, this improvised stuff, like it's pretty cheap to make. Because the comedians that are on this network are just wildly talented. They can make funny stuff just on the fly, and people seem to really love it, you know? And so one of the guys, the name is Sam Reich, that ran the whole operation, went to the PE firm and pretty much convinced them to like give it back to him, right? The PE firm kept a little stake in it, but he was like, just give me College Humor, give me Dropout. I know that there's something here. And in a lot of ways, they kind of had to like burn it to the ground, right? And then rise from the ashes of what this thing used to be. But they came back, eventually rebranded as Dropout outright. Where this gets super interesting is they found this one show. It's called Game Changer. Okay. The idea of this whole thing is that super funny comedians come on to what is a game show that changes every single time, hence the name. Okay, like they go onto the show. They don't know what the rules of this game are, and they figure it out as they play. And it's so goddamn funny. Okay, I'm not going to try to like explain it because it's improv, and explaining improv to anybody that's
like explaining your dream.
It's exactly like explaining a dream, where there's no way to make it interesting to anybody that didn't experience it themselves. Right. But the cool thing about this is because they're changing the rules of this game every single time. I don't know how deliberate this was, but they're play testing new shows with every single episode. Right. If one really works super well, if one resonates with their audience,
they can develop it.
They just develop it. They spin it off in its own thing. And now they've done that 3 or 4 times. There's one called Make Some Noise. There's one called Off Book. Off Book is basically them coming up with entire Broadway shows on the fly and somehow making it into a coherent thing. But anyways, I flew down to San Diego to see them. It was one of the best, funniest nights of my life, and I would absolutely highly recommend it to anybody.
Great. Yeah, I think so. We talked about Dropout once before, and I was like, I should go subscribe to them, and then I didn't because I think I went, and then I was like, oh, it's that much money.
It's only like $6 a month.
I know, but
it was $5 a month. Now
with the FX, it was like hurting me a little bit because I was comparing it. I think I was wrongly comparing it, and I don't think they deserve this. And this is where I think they have an interesting challenge. As you look at it, and you're like, wait, but I could get like all of Tubi, not Tubi because that one's free, but like, some other streaming service for that with a bunch of other stuff on it, or for like close to that or something like Crunchyroll or something.
Yeah.
Right?
I will say there's something different about this, and it wasn't something so I got pulled over from just watching a random episode on YouTube, right? I was like, oh, I want to
got pulled over by the police?
No, I got pulled into Dropout.
You're watching Dropout in your car on YouTube while driving?
I became a customer as a result of seeing one episode on YouTube. I was like, I want more of this. This is great. And eventually, because it's a small set of like 10 to 15 comedians, I don't really develop parasocial relationships. I don't watch Twitch streamers. I don't I don't get obsessed with watching the same thing. It feels like they're my friends at this point. Like, very one directional, obviously.
Right.
But there's so many little inside jokes from episode to episode that it'd be like, there isn't a tremendous amount of content there, but there's just enough there to connect the threads between all of them. That it's like, oh, this is a thing that would be very hard for me to ever like stop subscribing to.
Right. Well, that's good. Yeah. If it has the stickiness, that's all you want, right? Like, cause even if you only have a limited appeal group, if they never leave, that's terrific. And then you add a few, that's all you need, right? You probably added me with this because I really do like the stuff that I am served on YouTube. So I should just go all in.
The reason I flew down to San Diego to see them perform live in the first place is because I was so excited when they announced their tour. And I just kind of assumed that they would come to the Bay Area because I live in the Bay Area and we're the center.
This is me, Greg. Well, you have to come here.
Why would they not come to the Bay Area? And so they put the tickets online. I was like, wait, there's no Bay Area show. The closest one is hundreds of miles. Getting on a plane. Don't care. Whatever. So
Well, high praise, and hopefully they hear that. Hopefully this like bubbles up in their referrer logs or something, and then we
Hopefully
become
that
real
entire
friends.
spiel just makes them feel a little bit warm in their heart and that someone loves them. Actually, a lot of people love them. This is a weirder conversation for another day. But like this group of people managed to sell out Madison Square Garden to play Dungeons and Dragons together live.
Oh yeah. Well, okay, that's like so I did watch at least the first couple arcs. I don't know what they would call them. Games of what was it called? What the name
Dimension
of
20.
Yeah, Dimension 20. Yeah. And I really did love that.
So it's this group of people led through games of D&D primarily by one guy whose name is Brendan Lee Mulligan, who is, I would argue, is the funniest person on the planet, just has a brain that works in impossible ways. But so the whole thing kind of trips me out because like how a group can be big enough to sell out MSG, Madison Square Garden, and yet if I mention this to 95% of people on the street, they'd be like, who? And it's just the way the modern internet works. There's so much on the internet that you can have a massive, absolutely massive fan base, and yet that's still just like a sliver of people.
Well, this is the exact opposite of that. But I was hanging out with somebody yesterday, and I was like, "Oh, Bad Bunny. Like, I really like Bad Bunny." And they were like, "Who's that?" And I was like, "He's literally the most popular artist on the entire planet. Like, literally by the numbers." And so, but even that, right? Like, the people who used to be the monoliths also have like a defined audience, right? And then conversely, people who like most people probably haven't heard of can have a massive audience that is distributed, but like that comes together for things like the Madison Square Garden show. So it is very cool. I like that a lot, actually.
Yeah.
Because it feels like there's so much more out there that is to be discovered, right? It feels like possibility to me versus before you were like monoculture and it's like, okay.
Whatever TV tells you to like and to watch, that's what you like. And, it's just because of the way that the internet has kind of built a zillion massive silos. Everybody can be very into their own thing and be into their own set of things and find their people. But it's not this one thing that some dude in an office is being, all right, you guys like this now.
Yeah. Well, it's a good place to end because it is appropriate for our audience, right? Like the diehard Artifactor fans, the Artifactorians, the Artifactorists.
One day we'll sell at Madison Square Garden, Darrell.
Exactly. We're starting now, and it'll build, and then we'll be at Madison Square Garden. It's just kind of like goofing around and being like, "Is this episode 0?" To roaring applause. Episode 0.
Every episode is episode 0.
All right. Okay, let's go work on that. And we'll be back next week with more of this. And this one maybe is longer than usual, but who knows? We don't know yet what the right length is. So stay tuned. It's a wild card.
Bye.
Bye.